We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the People's Penicillin podcast. It's a podcast of hope because I believe hope is the penicillin we need against the bacterial infection that I call pessimism and apathy. The world we live in is crazy, and more so than ever, we need each other and we need a good connection to ourselves. So it's my goal to bring you amazing guests who have done their part for humanity to make this world a better place, from the biggest deeds to the smallest, seemingly unnoticeable deeds that somebody can do to positively affect this world. And I think we need to see more of it. I really do. So this is the corner of the internet where you're going to find a bit of peace, a bit of hope, a bit of optimism. And so my guest today is no exception to that rule. This is my dear friend, Eric Brown, someone who has went through tumult, the darkness, the pits of, how do I say this? Trial, financial, of the will, of the spirit, of the family, and has come out the other side not only stronger, but in a position to help lead others. He is the head of a mastermind group that I've talked about. Some of you have probably heard me talk about it many times, and how it's absolutely changed not only my approach to my life, but how I look at my business. And I still have a long way to go in my business, but I would not have made it this far without the counsel of this man right here. I cannot speak highly enough of him, even though we disagree politically on so many things. And I hope we do that a little bit tonight. Dear friend and fellow bourbon aficionado, Eric Brown of Legacy Capital Advisors and Street Smart Business. Thanks for being here, man. Welcome.
Dude, it is so freaking cool to finally get a chance to sit down and do what we do in private for for the crew. If nothing else, this could be the shortest duration of any new podcast in the history of podcasting. After today, they may all unsubscribe. I mean, they're all done.
They're out of here. They're
They're
gonna
out.
these
It's
two.
over. Yeah, there's
This is
nothing good here.
It's not what I signed up for.
Hey,
right?
tell Grandpa to go back to the goddamn nursing home, please. That's what they're gonna. I can see that in the comments already.
No, I think people are gonna find out really quick why you're one of my favorite people, man. And it's because at the core level, I think you and I agree on principle. And I think that is probably the thing that binds our friendship the strongest is that we both live on principle as the roots of our lives, even though my plant, when it grows up above the soil, might look a little different than yours as our political beliefs or how we might dress or talk or what we listen to or do. It might look a little different, but I think our roots are planted in the same place, man. And that means a lot to me because I know you operate from a place of wanting to be a helper. And so that might be the place I want to start. I've got my notes here and I've thought about this interview for weeks and weeks. No. Usually, yes. If it was me in like high school or college, I would have done everything I needed to do about 11 minutes before we started this.
Well, before we go too far, dude, I want to make sure the people that listen to this podcast, they also got to know a little bit about you, my friend. You know, there's, you know, you think it's a lot about our philosophy that binds us as, I think, close personal friends. And I would say that's probably true. But there's also, and from my standpoint, a recognition of gifts and things that make me jealous, things that make me angry, things that make me hate you some days. Because you got so much fucking talent in a finger that I just wish that after 56 years, I could have even just a little bit of that. So I think everybody, if you stay subscribed to this podcast or click subscribe whenever you get a chance and you go along for the ride long term, you're going to be blessed by this. And this isn't something where there's somebody just coming at you because, hey, I want to do a podcast. This is somebody that's lived more life in his years than I could in 2 lifetimes. So there's some inherent wisdom and knowledge, and again, a heartfelt concern to make the world a better place. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that they got a real gem here and that they need to stay checking them out. You know, I went back and looked at a couple of the old podcasts and saw that like part 1 got a whole bunch of views, but part 2 didn't. Dude, you got to watch everything that's put on this channel. It's going to be money. I'm not saying from start to finish it's going to be awesome, but there will be gold nuggets throughout, I guarantee. So thank you again so much for having me. Let's freaking dig into this thing, get after it.
You're incredibly kind, dude. I really appreciate that. And
you paid me to
I,
say it.
I'm
So
yeah, exactly. That $50 should be on its way from Venmo any minute. No, man, I am legit concerned for people. And I
preach.
think you and
Yep.
I both have tried to be helpers throughout our life and our lives in a variety of ways. And it's frustrating because you're not always sure if you're being a helper or not, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's clear indicators, but I think at the end of the day, it's just something you feel like you have to do because you see people struggling. And I think maybe at the core of it is that we've struggled ourselves. And I think the people
Yeah.
who want to come out and help and give advice and give teachings or whatever this might look like, coaching, financial advising, right, which we'll get
Mm-hmm.
into later. Um, I think it's because we've been to the worst places or some of the worst places, and you just don't want to see anybody else have to go through it, especially when you find out how easy it would have been to avoid where you were.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's usually the case, right? It's like it's pretty simplistic. So I want people to know that yes, you're a financial advisor. We'll dig into a little bit of that later, but I want to start with the fact that you're a farmer, and you
Yeah.
grew up in my neck of the woods,
Mm-hmm.
and you go to college. You're living the farmer life, but you get it turned on to the world of finance at a fairly young age for most people, and you go into ag econ, which you say is like one of the most worthless degrees ever, which is funny to me.
Oh,
We
it
can
is
talk about
the
that too.
most worthless degree ever. The most. It's not one of. It is the most worthless degree ever.
Worse than like underwater basket weaving.
Oh, for sure. At least you can make a freaking basket with that. I can't do anything.
So you find out though that the family farm, like, and
Yeah.
this to me is like the heart of your story, which is where you learned a lot of the core principles that you live by today. I think that this was like kind of the
Mm-hmm.
catalyst for that.
Yep.
And you find out the family farm's going under. There's some serious like financial issues going on within the family business, which I
Yep.
think a lot of kids who grow up on family farms, I've known many of them, they have this sense of security. Like the people in the office or mom and dad on Sunday when they sit down with the calculators while we're all watching Looney Tunes or playing in the yard or whatever, they trust. There's this trust that the family business has always been there and it'll be there. The
Yep.
legacy will continue. And that had to be kind of a shocker for you. And so one of the things I want people to walk away with from this podcast and you is really practical financial advice. When you find out, when somebody Googles what the overall credit card debt is in this country right now, right?
$1.3
And
trillion.
woo, that's so much money. That is so much
Yep.
money. And I don't think we understand just how financially inept a lot of us are. We don't want to admit it because, oh, the bills are paid and I have these things, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, what are we sacrificing for that? And
Yep.
what's the exchange for that? So I think a lot of people starting from this place of finding out what's exactly wrong with the family business at your age, and you've gone on to then advise people what happens, when the old farmer guy passes away and the kids are fighting over the farm and the
Yep.
property and the stuff and the money. You've helped so many families do that stuff. You've helped so many people in many other ways as well, which I hope we talk about the community stuff later. But first, I want to start at this place where you find out the legacy of the family is threatened. Things have gone wrong. I'm assuming that it was really simple things that could have avoided it. That's one of the things I've learned from you is
Mm-hmm.
that there's a series of simple things you can do to protect your finances and to
Preach.
make sure that these things do not happen to you, is like bankruptcy or massive credit card debt. Just the overall stress of feeling like you're never going to have the money, right? I think a lot of people live with this weird stress around money. And so what were some of the things you noticed right away when you stepped in to look at the family situation? Like, what were some of those things you noticed right away that maybe a lot of people are kind of victim to as well?
Well, I think to make this story credible, I think we have to go backwards just a bit to go forwards. Is, how's this kid in college ever going to come home and, fix $1 million in debt farm? So we have to go backwards just a minute or two to build it from where I started. And I would say age 12, 13, again, dementia's kind of fogged my head a little bit, but I know it's about 12 or 13. My dad didn't think that I worked hard enough on our farm, that he made me work on every other farm in the neighborhood too. So there was no days off if you were Eric growing up, which again, at the time I might not have been so excited about, but today I love the work ethic that was smashed into my head with a board growing up. That was awesome. So, long story short, I went to work for a neighbor farmer. And again, I won't mention any names. I don't know where, if the family would want me to do that or not. But at a young age, I walked in, we're talking about 1982, 83, walked into his office. My dad just dropped me off down the road and said, go see the farmer here and, see if you can help him. Well, I'm like, well, what if he doesn't want me to help him? You just dropped me off. I guess I was working whether he needed me or not. So anyways, I walk into this gentleman's office and again, 82, 83, and there's computer monitors and screens everywhere. Now, again, 82, 83, computer screens everywhere. Now, they were all green and had the little white letters on them. So it was prior to Windows. But I walked in and started just staring at them. And the gentleman asked me, like, hey, what are you looking at? I'm like, well, what all is this? And he says, well, do you want to learn? Absolutely. So he walks out and he punches me in. He had the old time clock. We had to stick the card in. I went, and punched you in. And he sat down. And for the next about 9 to 10 years of my life, I learned how to speculate and trade commodities. Every day before I went to work there, we'd punch in first. We would spend 30 minutes on what happened that day in the market. We'd spend another 15 minutes going over his existing trades. Now we'd spend the last 15 minutes of that hour going over how he screwed it up, how he made a mistake, what he had to do to fix it, what it actually looked like, what it felt like. So it would tie to me not only the number side for logic, but also the emotional and the fear and the greed side of actually having a trade that either made tons of money or lost money. So during that time, he assigned me books during the summer that I had to read. And they all started off with all the instant classics on numbers analysis, statistics, trading theory, finance, investing, yada, yada, yada. So as a typical 18, 19-year-old, I had a master's level education in finance, in trading, speculating. I remember back doing at 15, 16 years old, doing analysis between the Swiss franc and, the US dollar. And, we were talking about currency and which was stronger and how that affected exports and imports and things like that. And all stuff that, all 15, 16-year-olds today would love to sit down at a round table and chat about.
Right.
So anyways, Fast forward now. I am a senior at Ohio State in Columbus, getting my worthless degree, spending money I didn't have. And my mom calls me up on the phone, of course, crying, and says, Eric, if you want a farm, you better come home and figure out a way to save it. So I'm halfway through my spring quarter. And again, quarters, not semesters. You losers out there that are in college now that only have to go to 2 semesters. Us old farts had to do 3 quarters. So deal with that. That's why we're tougher and smarter, I guess. I don't know.
So you say.
But anyways, that was the call I got at college. And so immediately I started missing classes and went home and started again. First thing I did is went and talked to this gentleman. Here's my situation. What do I do? And I was blessed at that time. And this is first day lesson. We'll talk about a few of the lessons I learned real quick, like when we were trying to stop the bleeding. And then we'll talk about the question that you originally asked, like, what did I see? Like, what were some of the trouble signs that we saw? Is I got help right away. I talked to people that knew more than me and got advice and wrote it down, went to people that I wanted my farm to look like, that I wanted to be perceived in the community the way they were perceived in the community. And I did my homework. So, I mean, moral of the story is today everybody sits around and thinks, man, it's hopeless. I don't have a chance. I don't know what to do. You know what I find is there's a lot of people out here like you and I especially, and there's a lot more than people want to admit, that if somebody wants to ask a question on how could I get to be where you're at, or hey, what mistakes did you make so I don't do the same things that you did and I can maybe get a little shortcut to being a little more successful, we'd be there. I'd sit down and you can buy me a cup of coffee. I'll talk for as long as you want to chat about it. And these people did as well. And we're talking about some of these people were competitive farmers that if our farm went under, they would have got more land, and they still helped me. So rule number one is when the ship is sinking, we always say the first thing you do is stop digging the hole, or, stick your finger in the hole that's making the boat leak. But in this case, rule number one for me is immediately go get knowledge that as a 20-year-old, I did not have. I understood finance. I understood amortization. I understood mortgages. I understood debt. I understood profit and loss statements, balance sheets, income statements. I understood tax returns, all the stuff that most 20-year-olds don't know. I knew, but I did not know how to survive the ass kicking of my life. How was I going to go against a $90 billion bank? No names mentioned, lawsuits pending. I'm just kidding. It was Eric from college, 20 years old with no money. At that time, about $18,000 in college debt. And hey, save this farm that's, pushing $1 million in debt. I
to a
had to
bank
get help.
that's threatening to take it, essentially.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And they thought, and when I say they, we all can say they, there's always this evil, dark force that we're fighting against. I'll call it could be called our excuses. It could be called our circumstances. It could be called our friends, our family, our enemy, whoever. There's always we all have this dark force we're fighting against, right? And for me, it was a big ass bank who thought that a 20-year-old kid was going to bend over and just take it. Well, anybody that really knows me knows that's not how I roll. And at the time, it was the scariest, without a doubt, the scariest time of my life. And it wasn't so much because I didn't have anything personally to lose other than the opportunity to live my dream, which was to be a farmer. The scary part is knowing that my family could be harmed financially. My mom and dad, maybe they could lose their home. They could lose their assets, So I always said when I met with the bank, you have no idea what you're doing. I know what I'm fighting for, and I know how far I'll go to save it. And none of you guys, when you check out at 5:00, are going to go as far as me. And again, it took about 1.5 years of time, probably the worst 1.5 years of my life. But in the end, I won. And to still farm yet today, like we're talking, 34 years later. So again, it's one of those things where, we go through life and we never know why we're being trained or why we're being the obstacles that we come across, so to speak, are there for us. And everything that we do today, everything that we've been through prior to today is setting us up to be prepared to do something bigger tomorrow. And something bigger could just be sharing the hardship, sharing the story, so that it can prevent other people from having to go through and have things, just as hard as you did. At the time, I would say I would never want to do that again. But today, I would say probably 40 to 50% of what I've created, what my wife and I have created, is because of the knowledge earned during that period. And let's just say part of that knowledge was asking the question, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, they come take all our shit. Am I alive? My family's still there. Everybody's still healthy. Can I live to fight another day? Yep. Then that's a battle I'm going to go into balls to the wall. Because if that's the bad as it can be, then what is there to be scared of? And I think there's a lot of people today that are probably listening to this, or people that, that I hope listen to this someday in the future, that there's a hesitancy to act. There's a hesitancy to take that step forward. And it's either, again, because of the circumstances, that dark warrior that we all fight against, or it's just the fear of not knowing or a fear of potential loss. And I am here. If there's only one thing, and we could end the podcast right now, it would be act, do something. And I honestly don't care if it's a mistake or you should have pivoted. That's feedback. Trust me, when I went through the year and a half, do you think that all went swimmingly?
Yeah, and
I found
that's the thing I love is because one, the first thing you talked about was like you reached out even to farmers who would have been direct
Yep,
competitors or would have benefited from you guys losing. So one, it's
yep,
like you reach out to people and they're probably going to be better than you think,
yes,
because what we think they're going to react as is some inside fear, and it's usually not representative of anything that's like actually real out here. You know what I'm saying? So that's the part that I love the most. And I think it's interesting. So when you get into the family business and why it's failing, like we don't have to get into the nitty gritty of it, but I feel like, is it simple money mismanagement? Is it just, you know, not allocating enough for rainy day funds? Like people have this like foggy view of money, I feel like,
hmm
and I'm still coming into my own financially, and I'm almost 40 years old.
right,
And it's been a long journey for me understanding my relationship with money, why I had these weird limiting beliefs around earning money and what I'm worth and what time is worth, all these crazy things. And I know a lot of people have them in their own way. So when you show up to rectify the situation to keep the family farm on track, I mean, what's like the top three things that you would check first if you
sure,
sat down with somebody and they said, my family business is failing, or just in
yep.
my business is failing? Like top three things, like what are the first three questions you're asking them?
Well, always, every time, every single time, and you even know that I would ask this the first time, is I want to see your numbers.
Hmm.
And it's not just see your numbers, and we can talk about people that don't own businesses too. This is the first question I would ask if I was a financial advisor and when I grew up to be an adult someday.
Hmm.
I would ask you the same thing. You have to know your numbers. And this is the situation like on my farm. We're going back to 1990, 89, 90. So we're still early. Computers still have the server that takes up half a building yet at Ohio State.
Hmm.
So my mom is long forming, using the ledger sheets, and her books were immaculate. Checkbook was always balanced. Everything
Hmm.
was always current. Invoices were always sent. All that stuff was done flawlessly. But unfortunately, that's not even the most important reason to do books and records and to keep track of your numbers. Everybody does it for taxes, or it's required to do for taxes. You have to learn how to analyze the numbers, both personally and as a business. So if, hey, every time I sell this widget, am I making a profit? If I decide, and I'm a farmer and I don't even know how much it costs me to produce a bushel of corn, how do I know when to make my first sale in the grain market if I don't even know how much it costs me per bushel to create that
Interesting.
that bushel of corn?
So
So
it's like
all of us,
even in the 80s, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's like in
yeah,
the 80s. So if you're keeping these perfect records, it's not just that you keep them so that you can give it to the IRS or whatever. It's like,
yep,
so now let me look at the last 3 years. Let me
yep.
look at the last 5 years. Like what are the metrics of this business? Like if I sell fucking spoons or something, like am I actually making money when somebody buys this spoon from me?
Right.
But and that seems so intuitive, and yet we don't do that stuff. Is it just because people, like, if the business is good, they just trust it? They just
I
think that
think
it's
like all of us right now, this is 2024. And again, this is a long time ago, different time, 30 some years have passed, right?
Hmm.
But today we have all this noise. I don't know what else to call it in life and in business. There's so much noise that there's always something grabbing for attention. And most of us aren't disciplined enough to control where we give our attention to. So, as a business owner, we could always be putting out fires. As a parent, we could always be chasing the kid around the yard. As an individual, we could always be worried about TikTok. It's
Mhm.
it's all these things robbing our attention that we don't take the time to do the things that we want, that we should do. So I always tell people this, they ask the question, are you where you want to be? And the answer is, obviously, if I'm talking to them, the answer is no. I said, well, 90% of the shit you're doing is the wrong shit. If you were doing the right shit, you'd be where you fucking want to be, right? I mean, is this not the deal?
I think,
so that's the
most of the
hard
time,
part
yeah,
is you have to take the time for it. You got to do the
yeah.
things that the success in whatever that goal, life, business, family that you want to have, there's rules to success in everything. You got to fucking do them, period.
Well,
You
and
got
give them
to.
enough time. Yeah, I think a lot of people give up on systems because it's like, I've been doing this for like 3 months. I've been doing this for like 6 months. I've been
Yep.
doing this, and it's never, I've been doing this for 5 years. And okay, cool. I think at that point, if you've been doing it even 2, 3 years, you've been trying something and it doesn't feel like it's working, I think that's probably, that merits a conversation deeper about like business systems or money systems. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Where it's
For
like, I've been
sure.
trying this particular thing for 24 months, 36 months. Well, you have enough, again, what you're saying, data to look back and say like, okay, how are we doing this, and get a clearer picture of it. Yeah. And so for you, I know that there has been other times in your life though, where it's like, even though you had the knowledge, you still found yourself in like a financial bind, where this, like these situations where you're like, oh fuck, what am I going to do? Which to me, that there's
100%.
millions and millions and millions and millions of people out there that are like, oh fuck, what am I going to do right now?
Yep.
And it has to be even extra frustrating for someone who's been in this finance world to, I'm sure I don't think it's happened anytime recently in your life, but the times prior where you've gone through these situations, like it had to be extra frustrating, but almost redeeming too. Like, did you know how to get yourself out of it? Like, because you had this knowledge, like you knew what had happened, and now like we know what to do next. Like, what does that look like later in your life as you're really trying to I don't know if master is the right word, but as you're learning how to like ride the financial wave and make it work for you, like what was that process like in your personal life?
Well, I mean, we could end the podcast here, and I'll give you one note that would be the most motivational note probably that we could ever give everybody, is that I'm the perfect example that you can have average talent, you can have average knowledge, you can have average physical attributes, you can have average opportunity, you can have plenty of obstacles, and yet if you follow the principles that have been laid out for history and you do the right things the right way, the right time, long enough, success does come. Now, again, is that a law that I can guarantee that 100% every person's going to do it? No, shit freaking happens. Life happens. I mean, this is 2024. Things that we say that could never happen are literally happening every single day now. So there isn't an infallible way, but if I like statistics, I like probability. If I'm going to throw myself into a fight, I want to know that all the leverage is on my side. So let me take it this way. I can say one thing for sure. Every time that I've struggled financially, and it's been a few times that I've been in a little bit of a pinch more recently than I'd want to admit. It was always 100% of the time my fault. Always 100% of the time my fault. It wasn't the dark terrorist or the tyranny that was after me. It wasn't my circumstances, excuses. It wasn't the world. It wasn't this, that. It was my fault. And I found
Ownership.
out the faster that I say and admit it's my fault, the faster I can cure, rectify, and fix the situation. But every single time, I think if there's one thing that even personally or businesses can notice is, I've always said, and I've preached this in our mastermind group, that wealth is an income. Wealth is not how much money you make. Wealth is your balance sheet, how much you actually own, your equity, your net worth, how many assets you own minus what you owe. That number is what wealth is created from. Now, you can use income as a tool to create wealth, but wealth is your balance sheet. That is something everybody should Google if they don't know what it is. Balance sheet. Assets minus liabilities equals owner's equity or your net worth. That is the place to start. If you want to build wealth, that's the number you want to be looking at and monitoring. Okay. And I think if you can avoid here's where all the pain comes from. I guess I'll go this way. All the pain comes from cash flow. I could be sitting here, let's say I have $100 million. I don't. Wish I did. I don't. Let's say I had $100 million. But it was all tied up in real estate, gold, Bitcoin, stocks, apartment buildings, land, private jets. And in my checkbook today is $0 and my electric bills due. Am I at $100 million of net worth stressed out about money? The answer is yes. Now let's run the other example real quick just to keep it. I own nothing. I have shit. I rent an apartment, lease a car. I freaking even rent my goddamn TV from Rent-A-Center. I don't have shit. I own nothing. But I have $5,000 in my checking account and my $100 electric bills due. Am I stressed? The answer is probably not, or at least not enough to make a difference to change your attitude or change your actions or your habits.
It's so true.
So cash flow is king. Cash flow is king. You want to take all the stress away from money, then you have to have income that provides cash flow, and you have to have spending habits that allow you to keep the cash. It's a ratio. The more money you make, what typically happens, and I've done this before, you can ask my wife about it, and you make more money, you spend more money. In the end, same stress, same net amount in the goddamn checkbook. I just have more shit. You have to choose. When I sit down and meet with, go ahead.
It seems so simple, but it's so frustrating because you're right. And I think a lot of people who are struggling financially, it's like there's a number of factors. What's their job? What's their education level? What are they qualified for? There's so many other factors. But when it comes to just managing your money, it is really simple. Like, you have to know exactly what you're making. You have to know that number. It can't just be like, well, for a freelancer like me, it's like, well, I did get paid X amount of dollars for this gig. It's like, yes, but how much of that is actually yours? You know what I'm saying? Like, after the costs and everything else that goes into it, it's like knowing your real numbers and then not spending more than that.
Right. And
know
that's
your number
where
and don't spend more than that.
That's where everything goes off the rails.
It's so painfully simple. And I think a lot of this comes down to the Industrial Revolution, and I don't want to go on some like history lesson or anything, but this is one of the notes I had that I wanted to talk about. And it goes back to one of your principal things, which you talked about before we started this, which was success and survival. Success and survival in the modern century. But I also want to talk about this note that I took here: earning versus making money. So when you're a small business owner, when you're an entrepreneur, you're creating economic opportunity where there was once not an economic opportunity. For yourself, for the consumers, your clients. And if you scale it, then hopefully your employees one day as well, right? That's different than earning a living, right? Like, there's a difference between earning and making money. And that seems like such a simple thing, but all of these simple things around money are obviously confusing the hell out of most of us, or else there wouldn't be 1.2-3 trillion dollars in credit card debt. Something's wrong. And so there's a disconnect here that I think a lot of us are at the Sesame Street level of finance, and we just don't want to admit it. And I think maybe, I think we just need that education. I think people just don't have this fundamental perspective of money, so it's like,
well, there's a couple of things there. I mean, again, I'm going to dip briefly into the politics real quick, and then I'll come right back to normal, and then we can go off the fucking rails here later.
We can dip, baby. I'm ready.
Is the financial education and then how the news media portrays the economy, what's possible, what can be afforded, who's responsible, blah, blah, blah. Joe Q Lunchbox, if he actually is at a Sesame Street 101 finance level, he's getting his financial information from people that don't necessarily have his best interest at heart. There's no incentive for the media to improve his financial situation or improve his education. Their job, the way they sell shit and get viewership and clips, is to make you angry, to have you agitated, to have you pissed off. So they have to tell you that it's the man, that Richie White guy is against you. They have to, that, and again, I'm blowing it out of proportion a little bit. We all have to admit that, but you know what I'm saying, that there's an intent from mainstream media, or I don't even give a shit, mainstream media, anybody that people look to for, if you go watch MSNBC or CNBC, you can't even, dude, today, if you have an iPhone and you go to where, how you get to your stocks and you can see what the markets are doing, and then you scroll down a little bit, there's some news stories. When the market opened, I heard how it was going to be outstandingly awesome and be up 450 points. The market ended up closing down like 500 points. Same freaking news organization promoted the same damn story. So that's one thing. But I want to get back on track so we can actually help somebody here. I just got off of my soapbox. I want to help somebody real quick.
Well, we can put a pin in it for sure, because I think it's worthwhile to talk about the fact that there is no real education about finance. And I think even more specifically is you're a financial advisor who's legally not allowed to sit on this podcast and give us financial advice. You're legally not able to do it. Whereas you hop over on any other of these crypto channels on YouTube and they're absolutely giving people financial advice in this new deregulated system. And yet here you are, trained with a lifetime of knowledge in this fiat capitalist system, and you're legally not allowed to do it unless it's a one-on-one professional environment, right?
Well, yeah, because I sit here and I'm going out to the masses. You have 200-300 million people that watch this thing, so if I come out here and I say, hey, you should go out and buy Ford stock, for example, and everybody listens to me and does that, and then they lose money, guess who's super sexy 56-year-old dude is going to prison for that one? That would be me. Thank you very much. But that's I think insane. It's important.
And so, but wait, why then? Why then can't the crypto? Why is there a disconnect there? Is that why?
Well, as of right now, crypto is not being ultimately regulated right now. We just got it to be where a year ago, where you actually had to report your crypto profits. There was 2-3 years in there that you didn't even get a 1099 for if you actually bought crypto, sold crypto, and made a profit at it. There was 2-3 years there, when crypto started to become a thing. It's been around for a long time, actually, but when it actually become a thing, there was 2-3 years there where you didn't have to report the freaking earnings on it. That's how little it's been watched. And now crypto is making it into the mainstream investment area. So I'm kind of guessing that we're going to get in, they call it a decentralized currency, meaning the government doesn't have any say or control in it. But at the same time, how come the government can make them send out a 1099? How come, they say that I can't give out crypto advice or explain how crypto works or tell you what crypto does or why you should invest in it? I can't do any of that.
Does it count as gains? Only when somebody converts, let's say they have a bunch of Bitcoin and then they convert it to USD. Is that what they're talking about?
That's a taxable transaction. So that means when they do that, that means they took US dollars, bought crypto, let's say at $1, then they sold crypto to turn it back into US dollars at $2. They've doubled their money. They've made an extra $1 of profit. So guess what? Uncle Sam, if it's been over a year, wants to have long-term capital gains tax at 15% today, or 44.7% if you vote for Kamala Harris. You guys can pick whichever way tax rate you guys enjoy paying. I know. I guess if you don't have any long-term capital gains, you don't give a shit. I don't know. But
Yeah,
if you
but
want to have long-term capital gains, which everybody should, that means you're
that's
winning.
right.
That you're winning if you have long-term capital gains. You would want the lowest tax rate possible there.
And so is there a world where everybody gets to win in the system? Like inherently, do you think like if enough of us like, and maybe not like all at the
you want me
same
to piss
level, it's
off
just like
half your viewers already? I mean, we're only
I'm
like
just
40
genuinely
minutes in, and I
curious.
haven't pissed anybody off yet. I don't think. I don't know.
Oh, you know, anything's possible. No, I mean, I'm genuinely curious. I mean, I'm
Yes.
saying just from like a like if we're talking about you and I had just built this financial system and we're looking at the machine that we had built, like can it at capacity, like is there a capacity for it? Like can everybody be successful under this particular system that we have?
Here's the way that I'm going to answer the question. And this is just because we have to take in, and again, this is back when we originally talked a little bit about capitalism, not capitalism, let's all be socialist, whatever, is that I believe in equality of opportunity, meaning that I may not be able to start with 100 million like the rich trust fund kid has, but I have as little regulation. I have access to capital. If I provide an idea that provides value, changes humanity for other people, I have access to create from my starting point, and create and build. That's what I had to do. I mean, I was a kid that started out almost $1 million in debt. So I don't fucking want to hear that there's no opportunity out there. It can be done. And remember when I said I failed, I'm not an egotist. I'm saying that every time I've struggled, it's been my fault, my mistake. The one thing that I know that no system that I want to partake in is I can't guarantee the equality of outcome. That equality of outcome means that you could suck and you get paid the same amount as I get paid. You could suck and provide no value. You could provide no service. You could create no wealth for anybody and make the same as me. I refuse to participate and will quit participating if that system ever exists. I will not. You can mark it on your freaking podcast when it happens. If Kamala wins, you can just mark it that I'm done, because I will not be in a system where my intellect, my experience, my knowledge, my willingness to help and have an impact are leveraged against me. I will not participate in that. And I think there's a lot of people that are in my position now that everybody thinks if you're Richie Rich, you started there. I'm here to tell you that, the statistic is about 82% of people that are Richie Rich started with nothing or very little. Because usually if the trust fund kid inherits something, he usually loses it. There's an old story on the farm that the first generation starts it, the second generation builds it, and the third generation loses it. That's kind
I've
of
heard
this,
that.
there's some truth to that. So yes, I believe in our system. If you want to just invest money and think everybody can be successful, no. Do you want to just talk about business where everybody can be successful? No. If you want to talk about a complete world ecosystem within our country that everybody has an opportunity given their skills and abilities to be successful, I think that's possible. And I know that's unpopular. I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, because I'm taking your excuse off the table. I'm making you responsible for your outcome, not the tyranny, not the darkness that's going to hold you down.
I still feel like, okay, so under the system that you're talking about, that you fear, there's like so much state influence and control, right? I mean, that's one of the facets of communism, is that the state becomes so powerful. There's such a strong central government that they implement all the communist ethics, if you will, throughout the economy. And then they slowly decentralize themselves. But that's the part that never happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I've
so
never seen that. Have you?
I don't think anybody really has.
No, it hasn't happened.
But I would have to Well, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But so to me though, it seems like we fear this weird government influence, but yet here we are in this weird place where there's like this intermingling of government and finance. It's like the very thing. And it's like
Right.
the system as it stands now, I do believe that the American dream is still alive in places and in ways. It is. It's very much alive, and it's still possible, I think, to grow what we would call generational wealth. That to me is what the American dream is, but nobody ever like really just plainly said it like that. Like that's what we're talking about. You want the things, the stuff, the land, the legacy to hand to your children so that they can hand it to their children's children, because then that part's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Where can our generations go? Where can our lineage go if some of these fundamental things are kind of like here for them in a way, And I think we lost sight of just how readily available that is. But we are entering into this very weird phase where the lines are being blurred, man, where it's like finance and government and business. It's like it's slowly
On
turning into
purpose.
this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
On
And
purpose.
it's not going to be communism though. It's going to be something that has elements of communism and like elements of capital. It's some new like Frankenstein thing. It's like a technocratic feudalism. I've seen a couple articles that mention that term. It's something weird, something different than I think we've seen before. Like I don't think there is a historical precedent for what's coming. But I guess my question is small business really I believe it is, and through our time together I believe this, and you may agree with me. I think small business is like the bulwark that we need. It's the thing we need against what's coming. We need our own businesses, our own like localized economies. We need our own commerce on the small level. I mean, is that I don't and then from there learning how to manage money on those like upper, like more seemingly refined levels. But we can't manage money better when there's like not really enough there.
I
You know what
think,
I'm saying?
yeah, no, you're 100% spot on. I think to go back and touch briefly on what you said is, I don't necessarily think everybody's picture of the American dream is to build generational wealth. I'm just going back. If you take the typical American farmer that I know that I work with every day, I are one. The goal is to be left alone, to tend to the earth, take care of the animals, do the things that we were blessed to be able to do, and then be able to pass it. Not necessarily pass gazillions of dollars, but in my case, it's about passing the opportunity. It's
Right.
not about.
Yeah.
I'm aware enough to know that I wouldn't be me if it would have been given, or if I wouldn't have had to fight, or if I wouldn't have had to innovate, or if I wouldn't have had to be creative. You know, I love my son, and I won't curse him with a ball and chain around his neck of free. My goal is to give him the gift of personal experience. My goal is to teach him by being there for him when he has to go through some of the shit that I went through, but being able to throw the safety net out if he fails. The only difference between that and what I had was I got to experience all the shit. I just didn't have the fucking safety net.
Right.
And so I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't want to generalize and say everybody's idea of the American dream is to create generational wealth. I think that's a little bit too aggressive. I think if you look at most small businesses who you and I both herald, who you and I both want to create an economy based on that. I mean, right now, small businesses in our country are the largest employer. You can take all the Amazons and Apples and Fords and GMs and Teslas and all that shit. You add up all their workers, it's nothing compared to what us self-employed small business owners employ.
That's
So
right.
we are the motor of the world. The world turns based on our success or failure. So again, the only reason I want to touch back on this is I think it's super important. Is you also talked about this Frankenstein economy system thing. And I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute because you're so freaking well thought. I know there's rationale and research behind everything you say. I just want to give an opposing viewpoint.
Please.
I think there's a lot of people back when Socrates was alive thought that when their nation was ending, when their global dominance was ending, that this was going to be a new Frankenstein kind of system that implemented all the good things from when they were in charge, but there's going to be some of these new things that are going to make it even better and create this Frankenstein new system that's never been seen before, and then it's going to last forever. And
it'll
then
be sold as the good thing. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I wasn't saying that it was Frankenstein in like a good way, by the way. No, I was definitely saying like, like whatever's coming is not good. It's not the free market capitalism that Adam Smith was talking about.
100%.
It's not any sensible adaptation of anarchism or even communism. It's like to anybody who thinks that those systems were good in your own respective place, whatever's coming next, I believe is none of those things.
Yes.
And it's an amalgamation of some weird technocratic super elite and it's happening right in front of our eyes, but again,
and we don't fucking care. Nobody cares
because it's going to be sold like a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
The same way it's like somebody could sell you a Capri Sun, and when I grew up, if you had Capri Suns in your refrigerator, it was like, yo, dude, he's got like the name brand pizza rolls and Capri Suns. His dad must have a good job. But like, we look at the Capri Sun
pizza rolls, dude. We couldn't afford them.
But like, motherfuckers, it's like, look at what's in the Capri Sun and in the pizza rolls. It was heralded as like the nice thing to have,
right?
And it ended up being fucking garbage.
You know what I mean? I'm just filling my bourbon. I'm listening. Just filling my bourbon.
No, I already made myself another old fashioned. I do have. I don't know. I did make my own simple syrup.
Orange and impale it on your, or whatever the hell you called that. Impregnate it. What was the word you used?
I expressed the orange oil over the glass and wiped the rim. It's totally normal terminology, man.
Yeah, that's nothing that anybody in my generation would ever say. I'm just saying right now. That's why you
guys were so afraid of being called gay, though. I mean, it was the 70s, man. That was like the worst thing somebody could have called you in high school in a small town.
Those are fighting words, man. We throw down for that shit.
Yeah, back in the day, that's like. But nowadays, it's like the compliment. Like it gets you a job at Disney and stuff, So it's like, it's just so funny. Your guys' generation is very, and I would honestly say like homophobic. But not in the way that like a lot of people say it on the internet because they're trying to say like you're a dickhead or something. Right. And it's like, well, if you're trying to say dickhead, just say dickhead. Like homophobe is like, what the fuck? Like, like use it right. I think there's a lot of guys who went to high school in the 70s, especially in the Midwest and the South, where they're homophobic because like they're legit afraid of being called gay. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like they're legit afraid of it, And it's just like
most of us could be looked at. Everybody's going, dude, you're not gay. There's no way. Nobody wants you.
No, I am not, dude. I am not. Nuh-uh. Never thought about it once in my life. Only dick I touch is mine. Okay. And it's just, I know so many guys from your generation that are like that. It's so funny. Where it's like in private, though, the gay jokes are nonstop.
Oh,
they're totally comfortable with like out in public. They're like, nuh-uh.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's relentless.
I'm glad the generations kind of let it go a little bit as time went on. My generation's definitely like some how many people have thought that I was gay? By the way, we all started this because I talked about
I might have.
An orange
back in the day, I might have.
Damn old fashioned, by the way. This is what it's see, but that's your generation. You guys are expressing an orange peel over whiskey. Or did you give a hand job before you picked those oranges? It's like, wait, no,
I'm just be a reach around next.
You guys are so weird about it. It's so funny to me, man. But yeah, at the end of the day, man, I think a lot of people have thought that I was gay, and at this point, I don't even care, man.
Yeah, dude, you can't care. And see, that's a perfect life example, dude. There's too many people today that are letting themselves be framed or be pigeonholed into they're letting other people, they're letting society, whatever this gray man black tyranny is again, they're letting that frame them. So every time that something bad happens, they got a fall guy. They've got some reason why they couldn't succeed, why they actually gained 50 pounds, why they spent money on a fucking thing they just threw away that was $100 and they only had 20 in the account. And now we got credit card payments that we couldn't pay
Or
anyway.
Afterpay. Yeah.
Yes. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
all
I
this
think,
shit.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I think for a guy like me, like I grew up around farmers like you. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And I was always like the skinny, scrawny, nerdy kid, you know, and I'm just
Right.
now in my life where I have a gym routine and I'm looking to change that as I age into my 40s. But I was always the nerdy outcast kid. And I'll tell you that the idea of masculinity is, and
Mhm.
this is weird on a financial like podcast,
No,
but we knew
dude,
we
let's
knew
get
we were
into
gonna
it.
end
That's
up in the
true.
weeds. This is the good stuff anyway. So to me, the idea of masculinity is very, very strange, man,
Mhm.
because I will protect and I will provide. Like,
Mhm.
do I look like somebody who would have led like one of the one of the outfits in Sparta? Like, probably not, man. Like, I'm back making those guys' boots or some shit, or like playing songs on a weird old Roman instrument as they march into battle or some shit. That's just my genetics, man. I've always looked like
Yeah.
this. And much to my dismay, I'd love to look like one of the leaders, you know. But
Hey, you
this
keep
idea of
working, dude. You
masculinity
can look just
is
like
weird.
me. You know, I mean, if you keep working at it, you know, you'll get there.
I just think that what's very strange is and this kind of goes to the overall like conversation that we're having about the changing tides of the United States is we don't have these core principles that drive us. Like we're
Amen.
going for these like loose definitions, and it's like even say the word gay that we just talked about used to mean straight up like it was a synonym for happy.
Happy. Yes.
Happy.
Overjoyed.
Right. But then it became homosexual. And then in the 90s, we used it as something that was just like dumb or annoying. Like, I don't know, this is kind of gay. Like,
Right.
and I feel like I want to bring it back, but maybe spell it like Geigh or something. People don't like that. They slam me for that online. But like, I think it's valuable for some reason. I don't care if it's to deal with somebody who's actually homosexual. But I feel like what this goes to is a larger confusing narrative around almost every single fundamental
Amen.
thing in our lives, including
On
money.
purpose.
Man,
On
woman,
purpose.
money, like the difference between earning and making money or
Yep.
growing and saving money, or like all these like fundamental things are being challenged, which in and you know me, I love chaos. I'm
Mhm.
fine with it largely, but I
Mhm.
feel like we're being irresponsible with our free spirited nature with this thing. Like, as that's coming from a free spirit. And maybe I'm a free spirit who's like late 30s, almost 40 now. And so maybe I'm changing into like an old grumpy guy or something. But like at the end of the day, like I'm all for open mindedness and exploring new avenues and things like that. But there is a certain responsibility that you have to have with it, or else look, like now we have no clue what's in our food. We don't know anything
Yep.
about our money.
Yep.
Like some of your dear friends who are farmers, if I tried to talk to them about the pesticides and the herbicides and the
Mhm.
Monsanto and the stuff like that,
Mhm.
you know as well as I do, they start getting a little sweaty around the collar. They do, man. They don't want to talk about it,
Right.
and it's like these fundamental truths are so hidden from us that we're all living in our own cozy little like spaces of the world and the internet, and I feel like we've been led astray, man. I really do. And so to bring us back on track with the money thing, like I want to dig in a little bit to the fact that you're technically not allowed to give us financial advice.
Sure.
I really do. Like, explain, like, how was that explained to you when you were entering into the field? Let's start there. Like, how was it explained to you
Well, when
at
I
that
entered the
time?
field 20 plus years ago, um, the regulation, the financial industry was completely different. You could have open conversations in public or whatever. This didn't exist then, obviously.
Hmm.
You could have open conversations in public without having compliance or suitability or any type of analysis of content that had to be done. But now, if I'm going to go on and I'm going to do something that's a public event, let's say I'm going to speak to a group or I'm going to do a podcast based just on financial stuff and advice, I have to give exactly, basically word for word, what I'm going to say, and I have to submit it ahead of time for approval. And they'll come back
Really?
and they'll redline a bunch of
To
shit in
who?
there and
To
say
who?
like, hey, you can't talk about that, or you can't say that, or you can't do that.
Who do you
That's just,
file it with?
what's that?
Who do you have to file that with?
That would be with everybody. Every financial advisor has a broker dealer that has a compliance department. And so every financial advisor has to, if they're going to do something in public or something like this, they'll have to file it with their compliance department, who is ultimately responsible to FINRA, SEC, and the other alphabet agencies that can come in and say, hey, you've got a rogue guy out there promising that you can make 20% a year on annuities, which are hated by everybody, to old people that are 107. And so we're going to fine you $8 gazillion and basically remove you from the marketplace.
Is that a benefit over crypto, or does crypto have like, I'm just having a really hard time. It's like there's one side of me that's like, maybe. And as much as I want to talk about 1913 and the creature of Jekyll Island and the Federal Reserve Bank and fiat currency and all this shit, and it's the nasty things I can say about it, there are safeguards in place with this. Whereas like crypto, it's like, who's accountable? Some guy comes on and he's like, yeah, you gotta fucking buy like 2 million in Dogecoin, dude, because it's going through the moon. Like and people do that shit and they lose money, and then they're just totally fucked.
Yep.
And there's no accountability
here's the thing
here.
again,
And
though,
so it's
dude.
like,
You're in this scenario right now where none of us can be trusted to make our own financial decisions. None of us are smart enough. So we need mommy and daddy government to protect us from the evil financial guy. So if somebody comes out and says, hey, if you buy crypto, you'll make 1,000% 20 years in a row, you'll be a gazillionaire and you won't even have to pay taxes on it, and we do it, we're a dumbass. But we can't say that. So we have to come in as a government and say, hey, Eric, you're advising clients now, 1,187 of them or whatever it is you have now.
Well, isn't it that it's not that they're a dumbass. It's just like the information is not, it's not the thing that's being shouted. The fundamental principles of life are not being shouted. People aren't going to church as much anymore. So there's one less place people can get together.
We can't
to
define a
like
woman. How are you going to fucking define crypto? You can't fucking define a woman.
Don't make me have that conversation here. Well, which honestly, dude, you know me. I am an open-minded, free-thinking person. Like, if we want to redefine what a woman is, I don't give a fuck. Like, I really don't.
But
like, have the conversation.
Defining it. They just know that whatever you say is wrong.
Sometimes, but again, I think on all sides of these issues, you have people who actually know what they want to say, and they have their evidence to back it up, whether you agree with it or not. But then you have the other people who hop on it just because it's like they kind of like fit into the general group, and they may not have like the speech skills or the couth or the grace, because you and I disagree on a lot politically. Like,
yeah.
Over and over again, even though the weird thing is fundamentally you and I know that it's like self, family, community.
Yep.
That's it.
Hey, you know what I keep
United
hoping,
States,
dude? I keep hoping someday you grow up and learn. That's what I keep hoping.
You'll get there. You'll get on my level one day, man.
There you go.
And that's
there you go.
That's what I want people. Honestly, this is one of the reasons I was looking forward to this episode so much. It was because I have created kind of an echo chamber on TikTok. At least the people that often like interact with me, they all have their own leanings, and they'll tell me, oh, I vote this way, or I'm kind of thinking this or that or the other thing. And it's a mixed bag, especially on my TikTok. But I want them to see that like it's possible. Like, you and I don't agree maybe on some fundamental things, but at the end of the day, you and I both agree that like you got to take care of your head, so that you can take care of your house, so that you can be a vital member of your community.
Yep.
And I'm not sure that there is anything that's more important than that anyway. So I'm not going to like pivot or like rest our fucking friendship on the fulcrum of these stupid
Yeah.
political wedge issues. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That's an art form that's been forgotten, which again used to be front and center in a lot of communities. People would see that kind of thing going on. At least maybe that's the fairy tale I live in. Maybe that didn't exist. Maybe it's up to people like us to create it. Maybe it's just that people aren't being led. That's
Well,
what a leader
that's
does,
true.
right?
We are in definitely a leadership vacuum right now. There's no question about that.
Mm.
And I'm not saying we can even just ignore the political part of it and just go to church, community, family. And we can
Yeah.
unpack that just a little bit if you're patient with me.
Oh, please.
Let's start with the first thing first, is that, most people like me don't disagree with somebody's opinion. I'm okay with every single American having their own individualized opinion, as long as they're okay with me having my individualized opinion.
That's
And
right.
they're not forcing me, or they're not shaming me as a bigot, rich white guy, homophobe, blah, blah, blah. You believe you. I'm cool with that. I believe me. 100% cool with that. Let's talk about it. But let's don't put up the walls that we can't say that, you know what, that's a good point. I get what you're saying, but have you thought about this? And then you say, dude, that's a good point, but have you thought about this?
That's right.
The problem
Discourse, you
all
mean?
comes when we're trying to crucify people for having an opposing viewpoint. Both sides.
It's a very potent group on the internet that has stoked something that exists on both sides
Yeah, none
now,
of
and
them
I've seen
fuckers
it.
ever show up to my face to say shit to me, but they'll say all sorts of shit on social to me. It's amazing how
Well,
that happens.
yeah,
And I'm like,
I
I'm
think
right here. Let's
I,
discuss it. Let's go have coffee, and then call me a bigot and
that's
a homophobe to my face.
that's missing, and that's what happens when people become ideologues. For
Right.
me, it's like if you actually look at the founding fathers, and I swear we'll get back to finance after this, or maybe we won't. Fuck it, we got what a half hour or so left. When you look at the founding fathers, they were reading Voltaire. And I've said this so many times on the internet and off the internet. They were reading the ancient Greek philosophers, right? They were reading a little bit of everything to
Seneca,
like see like
Socrates, all of
what
them.
what have we been talking about for thousands of years? Like, what is the best way for humanity to continue building these civilizations and networks of cooperation? It's essentially what civilization is. The global civilization is a network of cooperation. It's unstable in some parts, but we're working on it. I think maybe better than it's ever been, at least as far as we know. And so at the end of the day, I think people forget that like that's what we're actually doing, is building civilization. And when we don't like approach the conversation from that direction, we get locked into these stupid political battles.
Yep.
We get locked into like you versus me and these things, and that's super frustrating.
Yep.
When it's like we're just here to build civilization. You understand what Ben Franklin meant when he said, "When you get up from the table of politics, everybody should be a little pissed off."
Right. The problem is that nobody today in 2024 gives a fuck about civilization. We're in it's all about me and my needs and my upset and the 3 feet all the way around me in a circumference. That's my entire world, and I'm the circumference. It all
Yes, and
revolves around me. And
it
again,
turns
we're
into a
generalizing.
cafeteria food
Everybody's
fight
not that
then.
way.
That's how it feels when you log on the internet.
Preach.
Because if one
Yep.
group, let's say, okay, this group stands up and says like, we're tired of you saying this and this and this, and you have to address me like I say, and I want that respect and da da da. And it's like then the other team, quote unquote, stands up and says, well, you've been saying this and this and this and da da da, but I'm a Christian person and I want this and this. Like they have to scream it at each other when it's like, you guys are so close.
Mm-hmm.
You're so close. First of all, take a fucking seat.
Right.
And what are you actually trying to do right now? Like,
right.
I always wanted to tell people that it's like, it's okay to live in a world where Christian families can look at the LGBTQ community and say like, they do things that we do not believe in. They see the world in a very different way than ours, and it's kind of weird to us. And that's just how we feel, right? They're allowed to say that, but they're not allowed to make weird rules against them. They're not breaking any laws. They're just fucking weird people that you see. And vice versa. If the LGBTQ community looks at them and they're like, those are like white Christian people, they're like blood of the Jesus, like dunking their babies in water and shit. Like, we ain't about that. Like, da 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 da. And that's okay to live in that world where we both think each other is a little weird. But then here's the kicker. If you, and this is where I really want to dig in with you for, especially for this last little chunk here, is when you show up for your local community, because I know you have, that's how I met you, was because you're the type of person who shows up at the local community. And I was a